Welcome back to Revise and Resubmit, the podcast that takes, those really dense academic papers and makes them surprisingly interesting. I'm Pavlov.
And I'm Nikita. Today, we're tackling something super relevant to your work, cross-sector partnerships.
Okay.
Those teams where you've got businesses obsessed with the bottom line, government folks deep in regulations, and nonprofits chasing that feel-good impact,
right?
All trying to solve a problem together. You sent us a fascinating research article from the Journal of Management Studies that peeks behind the curtain at these unusual alliances to see how they actually work day to day.
That's right. And what's really cool is this research uses a practice-driven institutionalism lens.
Ooh.
It sounds complicated, but it just means they observed the nitty-gritty behaviors and actions people use to handle the inevitable clashes that come up when you've got such different groups trying to collaborate.
Okay, so picture this. You're in a meeting, and the business person is throwing around terms like ROI.
Yeah.
While the nonprofit leader is talking about community empowerment.
I've been there.
It's like they're speaking different languages.
Right, exactly.
And that's exactly what the article dives into. These different institutional logics that each sector brings to the table.
It's like mixing oil and water sometimes. This research goes beyond just pointing out the differences, though.
Okay.
It digs into the actual practices people develop to make this unlikely mix work. They found 3 key sets of practices: embracing complexity, orchestrating complexity, and opposing complexity.
Okay, let's break those down. Embracing complexity sounds like a good starting point. What did the researchers find there?
They found that when partners really embrace complexity, they actively try to understand each other's constraints and perspectives.
Okay.
Instead of just thinking, why don't they just do it my way, they actually try to wrap their heads around why their partners operate the way they do.
It's about empathy and understanding, not just tolerating the differences. But I imagine that can get tiring after a while.
Sure.
Right? Like how long can you keep up? We're all in this together attitude when you're constantly hitting roadblocks.
That's where orchestrating complexity comes in. Think of it like having a conductor, leading an orchestra with instruments that don't always play nicely together.
So someone who can translate the jargon, smooth out conflicts, and keep the whole thing from falling apart.
Exactly. These orchestrators can be anyone in the partnership, or even someone brought in from the outside. The key is they need serious diplomacy skills and the ability to build trust. They spend a lot of time sounding out everyone's interests and potential deal breakers, searching for common ground.
That makes me think of those hostage negotiators you see in movies.
Right.
Calmly talking everyone down and finding a solution no one expected.
Yeah.
But what happens when those tensions just can't be orchestrated away? Is that where opposing complexity kicks in?
You got it. Opposing complexity isn't about trying to sabotage the partnership, but it's about individuals protecting their organization's core values and mandates.
Okay.
It's like that moment when someone realizes, hold on, if we do it this way, it goes against everything my organization stands for.
So, it's a way of drawing those boundaries and saying, this is where I stand, and I'm not budging on this.
It's interesting because it seems counterintuitive to think about opposition as a practice within a partnership. But you're saying it's actually a normal and sometimes even necessary part of the process.
That's exactly what the research suggests. Think about it. If everyone's constantly trying to please everyone else, you risk losing those unique perspectives and strengths that each partner brings to the table.
Okay, that makes sense. But how does this opposing complexity actually play out? What does it look like in practice?
Well, imagine you're that government partner.
Okay.
And the partnership wants to move faster than your legal team allows.
Yeah.
Opposing complexity. Could look like, politely, but firmly, reminding everyone of the regulations you're bound by.
Right.
It might slow things down temporarily, but it also protects your agency's reputation and builds trust in the long run.
It's not just about saying no.
It's about strategically navigating those tricky situations where the partnership's goals might clash with your organization's core values. That makes a lot of sense. But it sounds like these 3 sets of practices, embracing, orchestrating, opposing, are kind of intertwined, right?
You're absolutely right.
It's not like you're just doing one at a time.
This research found that. They actually fluctuate in a cyclical pattern.
Oh.
It's like a dance between collaboration and, well, let's call it constructive friction.
Oh, I like that. Constructive friction.
Yeah.
Because it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
It's just acknowledging that there will be bumps along the way. So how does this cycle usually start? Where's the entry point for all this constructive friction?
It often begins with a burst of enthusiasm.
Okay.
And a strong emphasis on those embracing practices.
Right.
Everyone's excited, they're optimistic, they're ready to change the world together.
Yeah.
But inevitably, as the partnership matures and those initial honeymoon vibes fade,
right,
challenges pop up.
Makes sense. You can't just run on good intentions and share dreams forever. Reality bites eventually.
Exactly. And that's when those orchestrating practices become crucial.
Okay.
You need someone to step in and help manage the growing complexity, facilitate communication, and maybe even play referee when disagreements arise.
So it's like shifting gears from free-flowing brainstorming to a more structured teamwork. You need rules of engagement, clear roles, and someone to keep everyone focused.
Precisely. But here's where it gets really interesting. Even with the best orchestrator in the world, there will be times when those institutional logics just clash too hard. That's when opposing practices come into play.
Okay, so let's dig into that opposing phase a bit more. You mentioned it can actually be a positive force in the partnership. How so?
Well, think about it this way. When partners engage in opposing practices, they're essentially reaffirming their own values and priorities.
Okay.
It's like saying, hey, I'm committed to this partnership, but I'm also not willing to compromise on this fundamental aspect of who we are.
So it's a way of setting healthy boundaries,
Exactly.
preventing resentment from building up, and ensuring that each partner feels respected and heard.
Exactly. And here's the fascinating part. The researchers found that opposing practices, when done well, can actually lead to what they call process success.
Process success. That sounds intriguing. How is that different from just, plain old success?
Think of plain old success as achieving the partnership's stated goals.
Okay.
What we could call impact success. You're hitting those milestones. You're making a difference. Everyone's happy. But process success is about making sure the partnership itself remains healthy and functional, even when things get tough.
So it's about the sustainability of the collaboration, the ability to weather those inevitable storms, and come out stronger on the other side.
Exactly. And opposing practices by allowing partners to vent frustrations and reassert their boundaries can actually contribute to that long-term stability.
Okay.
It's like a pressure release valve, preventing the whole thing from exploding.
Okay, that's a really helpful distinction. So we've got impact success, driven by embracing practices, and process success, driven by opposing practices. But where does orchestrating fit into all of this?
Orchestrating helps move the partnership through both those phases, facilitating collaboration during those impact-focused moments, and mediating conflict during those times when opposing practices come to the forefront.
It's like the orchestrator is constantly adjusting the tempo and dynamics of the partnership, making sure everyone's playing their part and the music keeps flowing. But this whole cyclical pattern raises a question for me.
Okay.
If opposing practices are a natural part of the process, how do you prevent them from completely derailing the partnership?
That's a great question. And it leads us to one of the most intriguing findings of this research. The researchers found that opposing practices, even when they seem like they're pulling the partnership apart, can actually create the conditions for a renewed emphasis on embracing practices. It's like a pendulum swinging back and forth, ultimately finding a new equilibrium.
Wait, really? So those moments of friction can actually lead to deeper collaboration. How does that work?
Think about it like this. When partners engage in opposing practices, they're essentially drawing those lines in the sand. They're clarifying what's non-negotiable for their organization.
Okay.
And once those boundaries are clear, it can actually make it easier to collaborate on everything else.
So it's like once you've had that healthy debate and everyone understands where everyone else stands, you can actually move forward with more confidence and trust.
Exactly. And that's where those skilled orchestrators really shine. They can leverage those clarified boundaries to facilitate a more productive and focused dialogue, guiding the partnership back towards those embracing practices and that shared pursuit of impact success.
So it's like a spiral, right? Each cycle of embracing, orchestrating, and opposing brings the partnership to a new level of understanding and effectiveness.
That's a great way to put it. It's not a linear progression, but rather this iterative process of growth and adaptation. And the key takeaway for you is that recognizing this cyclical pattern can be incredibly valuable. It can help you anticipate challenges, make more informed decisions about your own level of engagement, and ultimately increase the likelihood that the partnership will succeed.
This has been so insightful. It really flips the script on how we usually think about conflict and collaboration.
Right.
It's not about avoiding those tough conversations, but about understanding how they can actually strengthen the partnership.
Absolutely. And it highlights how important it is to have those skilled orchestrators in place, people who can navigate those complex dynamics and guide the partnership towards both process success and impact success.
Well, I know I'm walking away from this deep dive with a whole new perspective on cross-sector partnerships. I'm definitely going to be looking for those cyclical patterns in my own collaborations. What about you? What's your biggest takeaway from this research? What will you be applying to your own work? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
And don't forget to subscribe to Revise and Resubmit on Spotify and Apple Podcasts for more captivating deep dives like this one. And if you're enjoying the show and want to support us in creating more insightful content, consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Every contribution helps us continue this journey of exploration and discovery. Until next time, keep those minds curious, keep questioning, and keep revising and resubmitting.